all the gorgeous faces. I love having you guys sitting on the couch like that, because you know that When Harry Met Sally, you know the movie When Harry Met Sally, and they have all the couples sitting on the couch. That's what I pictured. I'm going to do it again with Johnny and Sean, but that might not be so. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for joining again tonight. And this is our first ever Thursday guest call, and I'm happy to have you here with the amazing Sean Pratt and Anna Clements. And we have a really interesting subject we're going to dive into today, and it carries over into a lot of aspects. So I've gathered you all here today to discuss as you all know, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows, and if you don't, Sean Pratt is a well-known audiobook narrator and coach, beloved coach, and he is located in America. Anna Clements is equally beloved audiobook narrator and like the person we all go to when we're freaking out and need a wise word of advice over here in the UK. And Anna and Sean are what's the word I should use?
We're in the same place in time.
Yes. and I took the opportunity now that they're at Anna's place in the UK to get together and discuss the cultural differences between the British and the Americans, because we all get along well, but as we all know, there are some differences. And I think sometimes, if I'm not wrong in saying, a Brit will be applying for work in America, where a lot of the audiobooks are and a lot of the publishers are, and you'll worry, you know, have I put a foot wrong? Am I not being forward enough? The Americans will look at the Brits, and I'm not sure what they think. I've been over here too long, so that's why we've got Sean here to and a really good example is the promo video. When I put the promo video out, and I said purposefully, one of the audiobook world's power couples, I could literally hear Anna cringing. Literally hear it. If Sean weren't on the call, Anna would have had me pull that in a second. No way would she have let me put that out.
Yeah, I said, great, let's go for it. And that sort of sums it right up right there. That difference between either side of the pond. So
yeah, and I'm interested in how you guys navigate it, but then we also have to keep in mind, I want to know where we draw the line, because there's also a gender difference when we're working in the audiobook world, which I was naively unaware of until I started hearing about all the male romance narrators booking like these massive gigs. And also there is a relationship, personality difference. And Sean and Anna are totally different. Both fabulous, but not the same personality type at all. So do you guys have any initial thoughts you'd like to launch in on, or would you like me to start asking?
I'm actually, I spent a lot of time since you suggested this thinking about it. And initially, my feelings were that actually there aren't that many differences. You know, Sean and I often laugh about the fact that we're two countries separated by a common language. But actually, as time has passed, we found more differences. It's a bit like learning another language. You know, you go to France or Spain and you know how to say "my name is" and "please may I have a beer," and you think you can speak the language. But God forbid somebody should ask you, you know, where you went for school and what colour jumper you like to wear, and you haven't got a clue what they've said. So it's that kind of, on the surface, we all speak the same language, and we, apart from a couple of words that we say differently, how different are we really? Yeah. Turns out a lot.
A lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I've lived here like 18, 20 years, and I've got to tell you, every once in a while, I get it wrong. Like every once in a while, I think, oh God, I shouldn't have said that to Anna. She's going to get fun. And to be honest, she's funny about that. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's the cultural difference. You have to be careful to not be too American. So Sean, what do you think of it?
absolutely. There's a cultural difference. I mean, speaking just from as a coach, there's an immediate difference. As a teacher, I noticed it very early on when Johnny and I were coming over to London to do workshops. And I immediately realized a difference. I mean, beyond the obvious sort of, surface things about how we say things differently, different words for different meanings or so on. It's much more of there is a lot of cultural difference, and that does impact how, as a freelancer, you acquire work. And since the majority of the work that really pays well is in America, I've been having to sort of show my British students how it's done and arrive at a comfort level for them that works for their career in the American market. So yeah, there's a lot of differences.
And probably also, I think you can probably move, because Anna's always quoting you. Oh, Sean says that if you're in the forest and you make a noise, you're not a narrator. I can't remember the exact quote, but
if you narrated an audiobook and you don't tell social media, did it actually happen?
Yes, that was it. But I still get the feeling that there's, and I get this from Helen. I think she's on here. I don't think she'd mind me saying this. I get the feeling that there's also a very strong core in the British. I'm not going to go that far. There's I'm not going to go over the edge kind of thing. Like, I'll maybe take some of your ideas, but you're not going to force me to do that.
One of the things that I'm aware of, having sort of mixing socially with Americans, is that sense of humors are very different. So in England, we don't always say what we mean, but everybody knows what we mean, and Americans don't. So you'll say something meaning something very specific, even though that's not what you said, and the message they receive, which I hadn't appreciated, doesn't come across. So that's been that translation, despite the language. Americans tend to say what they mean, and they're not afraid to. If you're insulted, they'll apologize, but they like you to know how they feel and what their opinion is. Britons don't do that.
It's the irony.
Yeah. And when you're ironic, we think you're insulting us.
Yeah. We just don't get irony, or most of us don't. And when I was a student here back in the 80s, that was the very first thing I realized, was that as an American, I didn't really understand what irony was about. And that's a really big key. And so, like you were saying about my British students, when I'm pushing them when it comes to the marketing and the business end of it, I can always feel that I'm always having to push the limits of what's acceptable for them. But I boil it down to something very simple. I'm like, this is how it's done. If you want to actually do this for a living, you're going to have to come to some level of comfort for yourself to pursue this. And yes, you have to sort of adapt to the American market. And it would be no different than if I were an American theater actor and I came over to London to try to to work. I would have to adapt my marketing and my business plans to fit the British market for that. Because as an American, it wouldn't be acceptable from the way I would pursue my business over here if I were trying to, say, get into the theater and film market over here.
I always say that there's a big difference between self-promotion and self-aggrandizement. And we as Brits struggle with that, walking that line, and not feeling like we're just showing off and therefore everybody's going to hate us. And I don't think we do it very well. So there are several Brits, hopefully not me included, who will promote themselves, and they're so embarrassed in doing so that it comes across badly. Yeah. And you go, because we're just not good at it. It's not something we're taught to do. It's not something we're encouraged to do, but it's something we have to do to move forward.
And they're uncomfortable, and you can feel and then something I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, Sean, because it could be a difference in personalities, and even more so probably now. When I lived in America, I find in America you grow up, you're always kind of on edge because there's a lot of pressure to be something, to be successful, and you're always worried, and everything feels like some catastrophe could, maybe I'm just giving away too much about my life, but there was always like a possible catastrophe. Like there could be an earthquake wherever you live. There could be a hurricane. Something bad could happen. You could lose all your money like quickly or something. There's always like a feeling of impending. You have to be always on top of everything. And when Anna talks, and Helen as well, there's just something like, we've been here 8 million years. It's all going to be fine in the end. Maybe it's because they're, the history in the country and everything, they've been through a lot, but there's a grounding around Brits that I don't get with Americans.
Well, it depends on, I think maybe it depends on what part of America you come from. I think, I don't know, I mean, only my own experience, but there is that kind of brash Americanism, that kind of can-do entrepreneurism, where we let confidence overtake competence at times. But sometimes having a winning smile and a little twinkle on your tooth or whatever, like, hey, that will carry you a good distance and help you smooth out the bumps along the way. Because nobody is good at this when they start, or very, very few people. I certainly wasn't when I started. I was terrible at it. But one of the things I like about being an American is the sense of reinvention, that the country is so large that if you can't make it in Dallas, you pack your bags and you go to Chicago, and nobody knows you in Chicago. And you can start all over. And you can take the experience of, having struggled in Dallas, Texas, to Chicago, Illinois, and suddenly it all clicks. And that, I think, is one of the nice things about our country, and that sense of entrepreneurism, of go, 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 if you're going to be a freelancer. For better or worse, I try to accentuate the positive about it.
But that's a good point. There's two sides, isn't there? There's the two sides, because if you asked me, that's a really good point, because if you asked me to trade that for just the stability, I wouldn't want to.
Right.
But it comes with a double-edged sword of always being like, not knowing if you've got the goods behind the smile and the lipstick and the, you know what I mean?
Well, fake it till you make it, and that's a really American kind of attitude, which I found as a coach when I interact with my British students, that that you can just see the hackles go up when I say, yeah, just don't worry about it. Just fake it till you make it, go. In fact, I had a session today where I was talking with a British student, and she's really struggling with feeling confident in her, as she's narrating. She keeps re-recording the bits that she's working on. And I understand that. That's, not only is she's still getting started in her career, but because of the technology, she can do take after take after take after take. But eventually, I was saying to her, you have to have the confidence in your own stuff. And even if you don't, pretend you do, and get the book out the door, and you will learn from that experience. It's about finishing the project and moving on to the next one, and you take the experience with you. And that's sometimes, I found again and again with many of my UK students, that sense of fake it till you make it kind of brash Americanism, it doesn't sit well with them for various cultural reasons.
I'm wondering if it's what you were saying earlier about history and social history. I don't know enough about it to know, but there is a sense, personally, having been brought up in Britain, that people are very quick to say, you're getting a bit big for your boots, or who do you think you are? There's always that sense of people taking you down a peg. And so the people I know who've done well tend to be quite quiet about it. I know when I started 5 years ago, I spent 2 years studying, because the last thing I wanted was for people to think, who did I think I was stepping into audiobook narration midlife, having been, in finance my entire life? What did I actually know about any of this? And so you feel the need to have this kind of foundation to you, because people are going to knock you back. People are going to say, how dare you step forward? Why should you have the limelight? And yet all the Americans are singing and dancing in their own individual spotlight. So it's a really different feel, isn't it? Whereas I think the sense you talk about, Helen, and hopefully I have, is that thing that it's a sense of, when I speak, I feel the need to have information behind me, so that if I'm questioned, I have something to say. I don't want to be caught out. I don't want to be caught pretending to be something I'm not.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just because somebody put a post, I was scanning for questions, and actually that was the person on my mind. Two things about what you guys have said. Simon Vance is so humble. I've seen him on APAC meetings, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm just another one of you guys. It's like, but you're Simon Vance. Do you even realize that, like, but he doesn't. And then Sarah Nessel, I hope you don't mind me bringing you up, Sarah. She's not shy in that way, but I'm going to, because she posted in the comments. She says, okay, now I'm starting to suspect I am actually British. But this makes me wonder how much of it is personality as well, because we were talking about speed dating, and on a post, I felt bad in the Cup of Joe because Sarah said, I'm good, and I hear this all the time, and nothing against you, Sarah, this is just me, and this is personality. So many people tell me, I'm waiting, I'm not ready for speed dating. To me, speed dating is a lottery. Get your name in there, get in front of people, shine them and dine them and razzle dazzle them, and then do it again in 2 years. They all know the game. That's what we're all doing. So she said, I'm holding off till I'm completely ready, and or something, and something in her post triggered me. And I responded saying, but don't hold off too long, because if you wait till you think you're completely ready, you'll never do anything. And Johnny responded very politely, not kind of disagreeing with me, but kind of worried that I was like putting someone astray. His post was, wait till you think you're ready. And I was like, listen to Johnny, because I think that is partly personality. I don't ever wait for anything.
Having said that, Daniela, there's that lovely quote, I think it's Hugh Laurie says, people think they're supposed to wait until they're ready, but actually, are any of us ever going to be ready? And if you wait, will you ever do it? You know, sometimes you just have to leap.
Sometimes.
You know, it is that
probably not as often as I leap. Because
the thing that you have to remember is that you have to go into it knowing you're going to fuck up.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to accept that. If you can't, and that's a really hard mental position to acquire. It's like when the show opens on opening night, you have to accept the fact that you're going to blow that dance number, or the joke is not going to land. And your first book, yeah, it's going to suck. And when you listen back to it a year ago, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? That's okay. That's part of growing. But to tell that to someone beginning, to say, you have to give over to the notion that you are going to screw up, you're going to make mistakes, for some people is so terrifying, because they think, oh, it's going to go on my permanent record or something. And it's not. I have students tell me all the time, they're like, well, these early recordings I'm really upset about. I don't want to put them on my resume. I'm like, no one cares. They only care about the last thing you did. That's the thing they're going to listen to, and your demo. That's it. Everybody, and the people in the industry know that. You know, when I was a young theater actor, I didn't know that idea, but over time I realized the people I was auditioning for in the theater and in the film industry, they knew that, you know, and the same goes with your audiobooks. You have to accept the fact that you're going to screw it up on certain levels, and you'll just get better over time.
I know we've talked about before on Cup of Joe about when I talked about when I moved into Punch and Roll, and I fought it for about a year because I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was actually producing audiobooks, and I was actually doing stuff and actually making books, and surely this is what I was here for. And then I was supposed to backtrack and become a beginner again, and that's hard. Being a beginner at a time in life when we're all grown-ups and we've all got families and mortgages and children, and we're doing stuff, and we're, you know, out being successful, and then we're supposed to not be good at something so that we can get good at something. It's hard.
But you've gotten we've both gotten really good at that now, huh? If I do say so. I think to give Anna and I kudos, there's a lot less angst. Now there's just the, oh God, you know, what am I doing today kind of thing. But before it used to be, Sean, did you ever feel that? Because you started differently. You started when the career was different, the world was different, you were thinking a lot of theater at the time. Do you think personality or nature, you just jumped into things?
John, no, if you know, for those of you who don't know, I had relocated to Washington, D.C., and I had, with a bunch of theater work that all fell through when I was at loose ends. And I remembered a conversation I had with an actor when I was in Washington several years before about audiobooks. And he said, if you ever move down here, give me a call and I'll introduce you to someone. Well, that someone was Grover Gardner at Blackstone, who's a real icon. And when I sat down with Grover at his house and we talked about audiobooks, I realized the potential was there. And so for me, it was like, oh, I'm going to jump into this. You know, I didn't know how to do it, but I figured I could learn. And it was just going to be one more thing I did as a performer: film, theater, you know, doing modeling and whatever, and audiobooks. Okay, fine, let's just do it. And by that time in my life, when I was in my early 30s, I had had 20 years already of, you just throw yourself into it, knowing you're going to fall on your face at some point, and you just get back up and you keep going. And I lived for 20 years doing that since I was 10 years old. And so yes, there was a lot of personality and experience at that point. I never thought that this was going to take off like it did. It was just going to be one other thing I did as a performer. So the fact that it evolved and now it's become its own universe, which it wasn't when I started 25 years ago. It really has changed. And so that when people come into it, you know, the stakes for them, or the perceived stakes, become so high that could become absolutely debilitating. But for me, no, I was like, yeah, the hell with it. Let's just see what happens. Let's go. Let's see what happens.
And you lived here, huh? You lived here for a while. You lived in the UK. I think it makes a difference because I notice new Americans, people still sometimes do that thing. Oh, you're American. My friend's American. They just moved to the UK a week ago. And we couldn't be more different than night and day. And you had the experience of getting over that by living here. So when you met Anna, you were already kind of one of those blasé, been there, done that, I know the Brits thing. How long had you lived here?
Sort of, but Brits are very mysterious creatures to me still to this day. You know, I figure on a good day, the British think I'm a Canadian because I've tried to be polite. But even so, it's like when I'm chatting with my own students or with people I meet, I'm always about a step and a half behind them, not only from the accent, but just from the lingo and the way that the British mind works, which is, to me, frankly, much more facile and faster than the American mind. Americans are like, we're sort of a bull in a china shop sometimes in social situations. And I always think with the British sensibility, it's much more nuanced and much more subtle than we are. I get things wrong every day when I interact.
Because they're watching and they're listening carefully. Yeah,
and so as a teacher, I try to always factor that into my conversations with them. But it also, we were talking about, it's also personality. I've had students, Helen Lloyd being one of them, Gary Farlong is another one, who took the idea of promotion and marketing and networking and just ran with it. And I think that's also, like I said, beyond the culture, that has to do with personality. You know, I watched Helen when she was working with me. You know, at first she was a little, as we would say, hinky about getting on social media and promotion.
He means tentative.
There we go. She was hinky about that nonsense. You know what I'm saying? And so and same with Gary. But once they got a taste of it and the potential, and they saw the feedback that it was providing, it sort of fed into something in their own innate personality that they saw the potential it could give them, and they really went with it. And you know, what I try to do when I work with my other students is to say, we'll take this as far as you feel comfortable, but just know the further you push this in your own way, the greater the potential for success.
So openness and awareness, you know, it's all part and parcel of the whole acting part of audiobooks, isn't it? You know, we are all permanently discovering different things about ourselves that we then bring to the audiobooks. And I think it's more than culture. I personally think it's personality and opportunity. I think people who've traveled, who've seen other cultures, who are open to the idea that you know, it's not my way or the highway. There are other ways of being as happy or as successful or as and it's a learning thing, isn't it? We you know, you and I have spoken for years about the different attitudes you have, that some days somebody will get a book from Blackstone and you're thrilled for them, and another day somebody will get a book from Blackstone, you're like, why not me? And I don't know why those days come and some go, and it's that whole growing process of learning about different people, learning about different cultures, being aware of other cultures and that there are other ways of doing things.
Yeah, and being flexible, because remember, I'll never let you forget. Remember the first time we talked and I did the American thing. Okay, this is what I think we should do. I think we should have 29 daily goals and then maybe 50 or 60 weekly goals. And then we can check with each other and make sure that we've completed all those goals. I have a spreadsheet, 15 minutes every day allocated until I'm 100. So if you want me to send you the template, I can send you that and a list of the contacts, and then we can make sure we've sent all our contacts. And Anna just very quietly was like, 3 minutes of silence. And then Anna said, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not going to do any of that. And I don't want anyone checking on me for anything.
One of the many things I like about Anna is that she's been around Americans enough to know that she could say oh, that's wonderful, send that over, meaning in translation, I'm not doing any of that, but she knows how to speak to Americans. And she goes, yeah, I'm not doing any of that. And then, yeah, and as an American, you go, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
We're so direct as a culture. So yeah, there is that too.
But it's funny because you see, I would never have had to say that to another Brit because they would never have spoken to me the way you did. So it's the whole thing is a nuance. It's like a dance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of trying to sort of work out who you're talking. And again, it's about the reason we do what we do is because we are adaptable creatures who love and are curious about everybody else. And that's half the fun of it, isn't it? The whole process of being with different people, doing different things. Is the
it makes you a fuller person.
But the challenge comes though when you have, because the market is really in America, is when my students or any British narrator is trying to make the transition to get in front of the major publishers and like the speed dating with APA, how that is so outside, like a fish out of water kind of feeling of being that forward with what you want to get. You know, I really don't, beyond Fanula Barrett, at HarperCollins UK. I'm sorry. Yeah, Harper. Yeah. You know, that's the only contact I know over here in the UK because the UK market is so small. I actually have no idea how one goes about pitching to the UK market. I'm bringing my students over to the American market, and I had to say, you've got to amp this up because you're going to get left behind trying to be polite.
To all the Brits on the call, and that's the reason we're all working in the American market is because in Britain, audiobooks, I don't know how to say this politely, it's secondary. You know, the pay is poor, the system is old-fashioned, the requirements are different. It's seen as an add-on rather than a thing of its own. It's not, I feel like in America, and I don't know if it's because of the expanse and the size and the width and breadth of the country, that there is, you know, it's the land of opportunity. But it has that feel. You know, the reason I work in America is because it pays much better and because it appears that audiobooks are well respected and well thought of. And when I do a good job, they're pleased with me. And in Britain, nobody's going to praise you for anything. They're just going to, you know, sign a check and off you go. And it's not a very big check. You know, it's a very different feel. It's a very different. Yeah.
And Helen had a point. Helen just said, to Sean's point, she said it's also it's incredibly secretive, the market here. It is kind of like a wink, wink, nod, nod. I know a man behind the fishmongers, you know, kind of thing.
You know, and several years ago, I reached out to HarperCollins and I wanted to do a book for HarperCollins UK, just to have bragging rights that I'd done a book over here. And they were like, we can't even come close to your normal fee, and maybe we can find one. And of course, then it occurred to me that the majority of the British market is for the British market. It's not, they don't want an American sound. They can hire a British actor to do that for them. Whereas, you know, as you well, we as Americans know, and I have plenty of British students, I'm like, your accent's going to open so many doors for you. Yeah. Because Americans love, you know, depending on the genre. You know, I have a student, Mike Cooper, who's got this great, wonderful arc. He does lots of Smithsonian documentary voiceovers. It's a great, great sound. And I was saying to him, I said, your voice and your level of talent are going to open so many genres in the nonfiction world for you, just because of that sound. We love, you know, it's that old joke about it. Every time you watch a documentary or American documentary, doesn't matter if they're Romans or Germans or French, they're always British, because that's, you know, that's what we accept.
And we love the accent. Well, and I mean, I tell my husband, if you want to divorce me, dump me off in a pub in Glasgow. I'll be married in another 5 days. Seriously. Because the accent, I'll admit it. I'm an American and I love the British, Scottish, English, Scottish, Irish accents.
Yeah. And so that's a real, and that I try to encourage them to say, you need to trade on that. And yet the minute they have to trade on something, they run into sort of a cultural, oh, you know, I'm putting myself out there. That's just not acceptable. I'm bigging myself up, as they say.
I always come back to the very first time I ever heard Sean speak. He gave a talk about self-promotion, and the concept was that it spoke to me because it's what we're not good at, and it's the concept of selling yourself and putting yourself out there, which implies that if you're rejected, it's personal. And it isn't. And the concept was, if you had a product that you believed in, for example, a bouncy blue ball, you would have no trouble at all telling people that it was the very bounciest and best, bluest ball you had ever seen, and that there was no money that they could spend that would buy them a better ball than this one. And the concept of selling a product separate to yourself wouldn't necessarily be an issue if you believed in it. Yeah. So believe in yourself and sell yourself as that product. And suddenly that separation helped me. It made the difference between me going, I'm quite good, I could do that, and actually saying, I have a British voice, I speak RP, I can do these genres, and if you'd like me, I'm available. And if not, not to worry, I can move on to the next person. You know, it's making that less personal, more business side of things, which again, nobody ever tells you. You know, you get into audiobooks and you're assuming that it's going to be, you know, like the theatre, darling. You know, the concept is that you're able to create art at home. Yeah. You know, how wonderful. And actually it's just business. It's business management, you know, the timekeeping and the scheduling and you and your sheets, your spreadsheets that you have. You know, it's all part and parcel of it, isn't it?
I'm going to interject because the questions are coming in fast and hard, and one of them is for Anna. Do you use your American accent narrating in the US or your gorgeous English one?
Only when she's busting on American narrators.
I actually never, I don't have an American accent on my CV because the reason I met Sean is that I was asked to do a book with an American accent, and the comment was that the gentleman was from Boston, and I thought, is that near New York? Because I'm from England and I know there's New York and there's LA and that's it. And then the concept that there was a different accent between LA and New York was a novelty to me, and then Boston was different again, and I was like, I have to see this for myself. And so I went to Washington and then to Los Angeles, and then several times more, because the whole thing's crazy. Everybody speaks different everywhere. And it was a totally mind-blowing, but I am Spanish by birth and British by nature, and bilingual, so twice as much to say. So I do Spanish, I do French, I do German, I do Russian, I do Polish.
But I love that that's your tagline and you put it in everything, which is another form of promotion. And you don't even know you do it. You literally like put that in like every other paragraph. It's brilliant.
But because the good thing about having a good tagline is that it is you, and that is me. And the fact that I speak Spanish and that I speak French and Italian and I can do South African and Australian accents.
It's your brand.
American ones, and there are so many Americans who do it better than I do, that I'm very happy working in my space. So, I'm a Brit in America.
I have another question for you. What advice do you have for Brits who need to, this is from Fiona, who need to sell themselves but aren't comfortable doing so? That is, how do they do it when it is so innately against their nature?
Ultimately, so I'm from a business background. As I said, I only moved into audiobooks about 5 years ago, and ultimately it's a CV. It's a personality CV. So Sean does a great thing with his students where he picks 3 words to describe their voice, because their voice is a product. It's not personal. It's not, The person I sell on social media and that I sell to publishers is the voice I am in the booth. It's not the mother I am to my 2 daughters or the lady I am when I go to Sainsbury's. I'm different people for different things. And so the product I sell is a very specific audiobook voice. And so Fiona, this one's for you. It's not Fiona you're selling. It's the voice you're selling. It's the product that you will be delivering at the end, which also includes a quality noise floor and a great product at the end and an interesting story and a great, you know, all the things that go into making an audiobook, none of which are to do with who you are.
Can I interject with something you brought up? You know that exercise you give them, Sean?
Which one?
The one about the 3 qualities that describe your voice?
Yes.
I've been meaning to ask, could you please stop giving them that exercise? Because do you know what they do? At least 2-3 times a week, they send me a message saying, can you please tell me 3 qualities that fit my voice? I am so out of adjectives at this point.
I'm going to send you a link to thesaurus.com, and then because it really does work. It really does work.
They're coming. At first, I think I might have complained to Anna. I'm not complaining about you people asking questions. I love every single one of you to bits. But I might have gotten on the phone with Anna going, Anna, I can't think of adjectives anymore. I've got too many of these requests. And I was like, oh, that's funny. Sean has an exercise. Like, thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's a really hard thing to do for yourself. So initially when I was, you know, the whole branding thing, I was attempting to, my name is spelled A-N-A. And so I thought, well, I'm assured and I can't think what the other word is I use. Smooth, assured, and I've forgotten it already. But I was attempting to create 3 words that began with A, N, and A, because I thought that was really clever. It's about, you know, it's oh, thank you, Marley, nuanced. I may have to use that.
Is that they're typing too much and I'm running out of the questions.
But it is hard to and often you'll ask like friends and family. Actually, one of the best things you can do is actually go on a workshop, something like the one that they run at VoiceOver Kickstart that's free, and they actually get all the other people within the workshop to give you the 3 words. And actually, because they're people who don't know you, they're often coming at it from purely an audio point of view, whereas your friends and family will often say, well, you're very tall, so should we say, what's another word for tall? And you're like, no.
So the genesis of that exercise was when I was, so when I was doing a lot of film work, a colleague of mine, and I was coaching actors on career coaching, he taught me this exercise where you would get 2 actors together and you would fill out have a form of adjectives, and you would have, if we were buddying up, we'd go to the mall. So I'd have Anna dress up in like relaxed, casual kind of thing. And so she's sitting there and she'll be at a table like with a cup of coffee on her iPad, working away. And then I would walk around the mall and I'd find people and I'd say, would you like to, we're doing this for acting class. And I'd handed them the form on a clipboard and I'd say, do you see that lady over there? I said, how would you describe her based on the way she's sitting and dressed and behaving? Ooh. What adjective, would you tick off? And then below we had certain roles, like what kind of role would you cast her in? A nurse, a lawyer, a doctor, a military, whatever. And so the idea is you're trying to find the essence of the actor as it would appear on camera or in the theater. And so I took that idea and I sort of mixed it up to just do the voice. And so for everybody's watching, if you actually want to do a deep dive into what this is about, I did a whole lesson on this for Audiophile Magazine, and it's on their YouTube channel. So if you go to the Audiophile Magazine YouTube channel, I did a thing on marketing, and I do a really deep dive into the nuance of this and why it's important. Because for most narrators, when they start, when I started and when Anna started and when you started, we were just one more person in our general category. And the idea is that once you can describe the thing specifically,
we can save them years.
Unique. And once something becomes unique, and that's like Starbucks is the easiest example. Starbucks just isn't coffee, it's Starbucks. And once you're Starbucks or Costa, you can charge more money for it. And people go, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that, that stuff at the store. I want that. And that's part of the definition of marketing, is to set it aside. And I love Anna's tagline about the bilingual, so twice as much to say. It is clever, but it's within the bounds of not being too clever by half. It's spot on. It's just
It's not cheesy, but it's memorable.
Yes.
I also, I remember the other A word is authentic, because that comes up. I started in VO rather than audiobooks, and authenticity comes up every single time. And ultimately, I started hating it for a while, because I was like, you want the real me, and I'm trying to be whatever you want me to be, so how does that work? But actually, it boils down to what we talk about often, which is that need, sorry, coming back to the whole American British thing, I often find with Americans that they're jack of all trades. They're trying to be everything to everyone. And so you'll go to the meetings with the producers, and they always say, please don't tell me that you can do every genre. Don't tell me that you can do noir and romance, that you can do mysteries and sci-fi. You know, lit RPG isn't for everyone. And it took me a while to go, but I'm desperate to work and I want to do audiobooks, so I'll do anything you'll give me. When actually what's happened in the end, by focusing back on that authentic thing, is that there are genres that I do better. I chatted with Helen about this the other day, and it's not that I couldn't do everything if I wanted to, but there are certain things I already do well, and therefore, thank you, Helen, play to your strengths.
Yeah, and you
Absolutely.
enjoy doing a unit, because I know I've changed my thing is dark fiction, and that's what I like, because I had a hard time putting it all together, thrillers, time travel, but it's dark fiction. It's a whole subgenre now, and there's a whole bunch of writers that are dark fiction. They're really cool people. I probably wouldn't want to be in a dark alley with them, but they're really cool people. But that's it. But when people see my website, I can't tell you, the first thing every narrator comes back and says, no publishers or anyone have said this, but narrators always ask me, are you not worried about pigeonholing yourself?
Okay, so my answer to that is, you will be pigeonholed regardless. That's the crux of the whole branding idea. When you walk down the street and people are walking towards you, your brain is immediately pigeonholing people. And on the most basic level, you go, is that person safe? And then at that question, if they're not safe, then you cross the road, right? But if they are, which is the majority of people, then you start to go, oh, the way she's dressed, she's a professional woman, you know, like a lawyer, or, you know, someone who's, you know, oh, that guy's, he's a blue collar tradesman. And then the way they walk, the way they're at, you know, maybe the sound of their voice, we pigeonhole people all the time. So you have a choice. You either allow the potential consumer, the casting person, author, whatever, to make up their own mind, or you go one step further and say, nope, this is what I am. Yeah. And that requires you to pigeonhole, define. Because like Anna said, I always use Johnny Heller as my example for this voice issue. When it comes to noir murder mysteries, Johnny Heller's voice is uniquely suited to that genre. I would like to do those things, and I know I could perform them, but not as well as Johnny, just by the fact of his voice. And that's what Anna is speaking to here. You have to realize, yeah, you can read, you can perform anything, but some people can do it better just by the quality of their voice. And once you know what those niches are in the industry, then that will inform everything about your marketing. But also, from speaking to the British sensibility, is that if you know you have those bits, then now you can focus in and just push that. You don't try to be an everyman. And that is an American, I think, sometimes to a fault. We think, oh, I can do it.
Yeah.
Bring it. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, I'm finding I like it better. Just, this is what I am.
There's plenty of work in all genres. That's the other thing. There's plenty of work in every single genre we've just discussed.
And Helen told me that as well. In Helen's, and I've got to give credit here to Helen. Helen's been fielding half the British questions here for us. We should have just said, Helen, you're on the call too. I do have another question. Anna,
sorry,
being a native Brit.
Type and talk at the same
hi,
time.
Helen.
I'm sorry. I can
no,
talk
hi.
and type.
Thank you so much. Because you've been literally covering our backs here. You've answered like 20 questions. I'm so grateful for it because they're coming in fast and hard.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's good to have you here. You are the guest of honor, Helen, and who better to speak on the subject, because you and Anna have taught me, and I'm embarrassing her. That's another British American thing. Wait, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I think the actions say, oh, no, 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 I'm going.
Case in point. But I love that. I love that. And it is fun to embarrass the Brits.
You said you had a...
Anna, being a native Brit, do regional UK accents come naturally to you, or do you have to go out of your way to study them and get an ear for them?
Depends which ones. I'm actually Spanish by birth, and so my cultural heritage is mixed, which again speaks to what I was saying earlier about opportunity and you know, an expansive mind. I became very aware very early on that you know, the Spanish gesticulate, they don't say please and thank you, they sound rude and cross when actually they're having an absolute ball. The British, by comparison, if you don't say please and thank you, you get slapped. You know, it's a whole different ball game. And so I walked that line for a long time. And also the speaking two languages gives you an ear for other accents and other languages. And so there are certain accents I do very well. There's certain accents I can't do at all, Welsh being one of them. Both of my daughters live in Cardiff, and I cannot grasp that, but I adore it, the Welsh accent. But of course, we all know that Nick Redman is the saviour of us all with regards to accents. And so, yeah, she's my go-to for any books I get where I'm asked to do something that I'm, you know, really not sure about. But, you know, YouTube is your friend, and there's so many resources out there now with the international dialects of English accents and, oh, so many things, so many places you can go and you know, where people talk about different things and you just have to listen out for it. You know, it's all part and parcel of what we do, isn't it? So, yes.
So what about you two? You mentioned there was a tiny hint of and in relationship. So like being around each other, what is the cultural difference that it was Anna said, the longer we've known each other, the more you kind of like find things. What things?
Sorry, I'm struggling not to answer a question that's just come up.
I've got to be careful because I got somebody, because Gina was telling us all about being bullied as a child, and somebody that's a future guest typed on, I'm not coming on your call. I'm not coming on that call. So I'm not asking for deep, dark secrets.
Just answering. So Chris asked about Nick Redman. There's also a group, Chris, called, I think it's Accents. I forget what it's called, but we'll put it in the show notes, hopefully, Daniela.
Yeah, it's a great.
You can join. It's worth every moment. With regard to relationships, it's just that thing about it's as I said, like with languages, when you go to a new country and you go, oh, everything is cool and everything's amazing, and say that again. And you know, I love how you say. He loves how I say Jaguar, except I now say it differently because I've said it so often.
Wait, say what? What did she say?
Jaguar.
Oh. Okay, got it.
Like, you know, they say Nike and we say Nike. You know, it's
drives me crazy. It's Nike.
Yeah, what the hell is that all about? Anyway.
And Adidas. It's Adidas.
Adidas.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I digress.
You know, as time goes by and more conversations come up and more vocabulary is used, and you go, wait, what did you just say? Like, seriously, is that how you pronounce that? Like, why?
but it's also, and this is getting back to the British narrators coming to America, how we turn a phrase or what we say can come off as really, I don't want to say rude, but sometimes it does feel rude. Brash, that's a good word. And when it's just being American. We just say it, we throw it out. And so if you couple the fact of being British culturally with the fact you're trying to learn self-promotion in a country that you're not familiar with, and the person responds to you in an American way, it can be really a shock to the system. And I've had to, you know, sort of talk some of my British students sort of off the ledge for that very reason. They're like, well, I sent a message to Blackstone or Cantor or whomever, and they said this, and then they're overanalyzing that one little blurb. I'm like, no, they actually said that means that's a good thing, or whatever they happen to say, or, oh no, they're just saying, you know, just come back in 6 months, or, but it's like I have to translate, a cultural translation, and that's part of a relationship too.
It's hard when you first move, and I'm afraid to say, I'll admit this, I think I've gone the wrong route. I became more obnoxiously American when I came here. I tried to fit in at first. It was hopeless. So then I just picked up the Starbucks, the backpack, and talked as loud as I want. But the problem is I've now got the British ironic sense of humor. And I'm noticing in my interaction with Americans on Facebook through the audiobook narrators world that they don't know that I'm being ironic. So I'm brash and rude. And no one's laughing.
Hashtag winning.
Yes.
I'm reminded of a workshop I did last week where they brought up something that I'd used when I was in business, which is the Hofsteder culture compass. And it's in the early 70s, a guy who worked in human resources with IBM did a really big research thing on culture and how it affects us in the workplace with regards to, as the world was becoming a global place, people working with people who weren't necessarily from their country or their region, and therefore anticipating how what you say might be interpreted differently, or how they might react to authority, and it's actually a really interesting look into, you can put in your country, and it basically gives you an insight into what that country stands for want of a better word.
But
which
then
again,
it's hard, because how much are you going to change and adapt? You want to adapt in the beginning, but then you feel like you want to hold on to a bit of yourself as well.
This isn't about changing who you are, because I like you, when I go to America, I suddenly develop this incredibly heightened RP voice, and I really don't understand why anyone can't understand me. And if I thirst for water we go into diners and stuff, and I say, could I have a glass of water?
What you want, honey? What you want?
A glass of water?
What? What you want to say? What you want?
I don't know how to say it. You know,
And then she says,
oh, sorry, water.
oh, okay, we'll get you. You want ice with that? You want ice, right? No, she actually says she has to no ice. That's right.
That's a whole nother, I can't bear ice in my water. I don't like freezing cold water. And apparently that makes for staring.
Yeah, because like, well, what about the door thing? It took me 2-3 years to stop. I can't remember which way is which, but in one country you push, and in another country you pull. So for the first 2 or 3 years in the UK, I was walking into doors every single time because it's the opposite.
But coming back to what you were saying about,
sorry, go ahead.
This isn't about changing your character. This is about using all that information when you create audiobooks. All the characters that we put into audiobooks.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Where are you going with that?
How are you not seeing where I'm going? So for example, I did a book recently for, I want to say Harper, but I'm not sure, called Prey. And it was a British detective novel. And I was like, ooh, detective novel, thank you. And turns out she spent about the first chapter and a half in Britain and then went to South Africa and proceeded to meet a Vietnamese gentleman who lived in South Africa, and then several policemen, and then a psychopathic killer of a really quite scary book that I had to leave the booths several times because I really wasn't enjoying it, with a load of South African voices. And I went to everywhere that I've mentioned and went, who are South Africans? What do they do? Turns out there are very different regions in South Africa and they speak very differently. I had no idea. But all of that is the research that we do. And that's the bit I love about audiobooks, is all that time beforehand, becoming that character and being those people. And even if it's nonfiction, finding out about authors that they live in Alabama, but they grew up in Oxford, and they, you know, went to school with an all boys school. Therefore, you know, it changes who a person is, and it
informs the character.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's where it's at.
The other thing to keep in mind for both, mainly for the Brits going to America, but also if an American have an opportunity to narrate for a British author or a British company, ultimately, the British-American connection is a bit of a love affair. There's certain things we really love about each culture. And part of it is learning what things in the other culture that they appreciate about me being an American, or as an American, what I appreciate about someone being British, and capitalizing on that in your marketing and your networking and your advertising. So, and it's a sensibility, it's a learned thing. And this has nothing to do with how good you are as a storyteller. This is a business thing. And what's wonderful is on YouTube, there are plenty of videos about marketing and advertising and cultural differences. It's about finding your authenticity. And then, you know, when you're authentic, I always think as long as you're not a real jerk, there's a charm in authenticity. And so if you can build off of that kernel of who are you as a person, and then through the filter of your culture, an American will really appreciate that, or vice versa. So, you know, you shouldn't stop being less British culturally in the broad sense. It's that you're accentuating things that Americans love about that. And there are ways to find out what those things are, whether it's the RP or the sensibility of irony or humor, and how do you translate it into marketing, whether you have your marketing has obvious British symbols in it, whether your demos reflect that kind of some irony in the piece, you know. But ultimately, the two countries, it's a except for the whole thing around 1776, we get along pretty well, and there's a real love affair there. And we like that we admire each other for that reason.
And you're always going to get the person that doesn't, because I had that review that stopped me acting, where he said I had the worst American accent he'd ever heard, and I was so obnoxious that real Americans aren't that obnoxious. And I thought the British were supposed to be nice.
I don't know why you would have thought that.
Yeah.
But they are in general. I mean, I know that's a generalization, right? But I don't think I've encountered that many in-your-face rude people since I've been here. And I've been here a long time now, you know.
One of the things I picked up, I went and had a look at that Hofsteder Insights, and one of the things they talked about was the difference between Brits and Americans. They have like 5 or 6 different characteristics that they pick, and they basically scale you from 0 to 100 on these different things. And on both British and American people are very individualistic, which I thought was really interesting, because I always think of the Americans as very driven, very personally driven, whereas I don't think British people are, mostly because we're not sure what we're driving to or from. It's a bit confusing.
I know, but think about it. Can you imagine someone telling you how you're supposed to act or be, or I'm going to bring her up again, she's going to cringe, telling Helen Lloyd how she should behave or act? You're both the most individualistic people I've ever met in my life. It's individualist, isn't it?
It was the difference between the fact that the British are individualistic and private people, whereas the Americans are just individualistic. So the comment that I wrote down was that the idea of highly individualistic in America is about liberty and justice for all and equal rights. And it's very shouty and loud and in your face. Whereas the individualism in Britain is about happiness through personal fulfillment. Much more of a laissez-faire attitude, more of a live and let live. And I think that's also to do with the fact that, you know, through immigration, we've had a more multicultural society, because we're so much smaller as an island. Particularly in London, having been born and brought up in London, I am aware that there wasn't a time when there wasn't other cultures in my immediate surroundings. You know, whether they were Greek or Jewish or Indian or Spanish or British or Irish, everybody was everywhere. And I never questioned the idea that, so I'm also aware that having lived for 25 years in Devon, where everybody is very similar and usually from there and stayed there, they have a very different outlook on life. And so I think it's not to do with necessarily your culture from your country anymore, because we are also global. It's more to do with your life experience, how your parents treated you, what sort of school you went to, how you chose to earn a living, what terrible things life dealt you and how you dealt with them. All of those things, as you said, affect the choices we make with regards to the characters we voice, but also who we are as people.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no right or wrong. I mean,
No.
it's all completely, but I like the idea. I don't know if you guys find this, a Brit and American being together, just like, as you know, I'm with a Scotsman. I like that balance. I think personalities balance themselves out. And I think the cultural differences help because they make you more open.
Well,
And
you have to acquire a sensitivity to navigate that.
yeah,
And that, I mean, and then once again, that gets back to if you're trying to cross the pond to find that work, you have to be, and then the onus is on the British narrators because they're coming into this market. They have to understand, I don't want to say get a thicker hide because it's not that people are being, like Anna said, it's just business. It's not personal.
It's also, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship,
Yes.
it's about communication. It's about saying, I'm sorry, you sent me an email saying that if I was the last narrator alive, you wouldn't hire me. Did you actually mean that? Or should I continue in this genre? You know, if sometimes you have to ask questions. And it's Sean when he'll say something, and sometimes I will stop and go, I'm sorry, when you said that, is that what you actually meant? Because I'm always reading between the lines. As a Brit, because we don't actually say what we mean, you hear people say things and then you spend your whole time saying, well, he could have meant this, but he could have meant that. But actually, did he mean the complete opposite? Or was he actually saying what he said?
and then they come back.
Just read the lines. They're right there. The line
I
is
know,
right
and
there.
then do you not find, because I gotta say, so many Brits, then they come back to you like 5 weeks later and say, remember that book that I loved? Oh my God, there was a book Anna did that I listened to. I didn't know it was Anna. It was when we first started, and I was, I was blown away by how stunning her voice was and how amazing her narration was of it. And I told her in the whole American way, oh my God, that's the most amazing book. I've got to leave you a review. Well, I'm lousy at leaving other people reviews, not because I don't care, because I care too much. So I put it off. So I never did. Like 2 years later, Anna said,
this was 2 years ago.
Anna said to me, I thought that you really didn't like it, and that's why you didn't leave the review. The whole time she'd had that thought, I didn't have a clue. I just literally forgot. And it happens all the time. It's like, no, really, I don't.
The trouble is, as Brits, we're not very good at, in the moment, saying, I'm actually quite offended by that. Instead, we say, not to worry, and we carry on, stiff upper lip and all that. And actually, we're just suffering for it. And I think if nothing else, what I've learned from the Americans is there is a lot to be said for saying how you feel and communicating. And if you want to work in audiobooks and do murder mysteries, ask. And if they say no, ask someone else. You know, and actually that's the game, is learning that idea of being open to rejection, which ultimately the job is all about, and also open to opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And 99% of the time, if they haven't said it, they're not thinking it. I mean, even with publishers, do you not find with publishers not getting back to you? Somebody said to me, I disagree with this completely. I'd be interested in Sean's opinion actually about this, because I've had different things told to me. Emily Lawrence, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me quoting her on this because I think she's amazing, told me that you just send the letters to publishers every 6 to 8 weeks and you keep sending them. It's a relationship, you have to build it, and you're almost never going to hear back from them the first contact or the second contact. Don't be obnoxious, be professional, and keep contacting them. But then someone else on another call, I can't remember who, said, oh, I heard from a publisher that if you don't get a response from the publisher, that's your answer, that's your response. I personally like Emily's idea better, because I feel like the publisher doesn't know me. Half the time they probably didn't even clock the email. And how can it hurt if I'm still reaching out? If I thought if I don't get a response, that's a response, then I would be doing what Anna did. And 4 years later thinking they didn't respond because they hate me. What do you think?
Okay, so start off with human psychology. We have a natural tendency to fill a vacuum of information, like we don't know what's going to happen. We fill that vacuum with anxiety, with bad thoughts. It's a defense mechanism, right? So when the publisher doesn't get back to you, you think, oh, they must hate my demo. They don't want to spend time. What you might not know is they have 57 emails just like yours, and they don't have time to get through them all. And that's just the way it is. And they're on a deadline for 700 other projects, and then it's not personal. It's just not. As far as staying in touch with them, what I tell my students is, if you're going to apply to a publisher, follow the procedures on the website, but try to find ways to connect with them. So you do the speed dating, you go to cocktail parties or the Zoom meetings or whatever, and you hope for that one-off chance to connect, and then that's the seed for that particular person. They get so many unsolicited emails and contacts that they don't really look at those. They just don't have time. And once again, that's not personal. They just don't have time. And so, there was an incident that happened several years ago at one of the APAC panels. Unfortunately, I was not in the room when it happened. My students told me about it. There was a woman who was a casting director of an audio book publisher. And I'm absolutely appalled by that.
Well, I think that's fair enough. If they were to reply to you with, thank you, Daniela, I've got your emails. Please don't write to me anymore. If I have anything, I'll let you know. Then you would know where you stand. Right. It's just a relationship.
Right. Yeah. But the part that I got was upsetting to me was the story that was told me was the woman said, don't send me anything. If I'm interested, I will find you. And I thought, that's ridiculous, because there's always new people coming on board that could be perfect for the job. And, this comes from being in the theater for a long time. If you have the word casting director after your name, I'm sorry, but you're going to get stuff. And when I hear someone say, don't send anything, what I'm actually hearing is, I'm overworked and understaffed. And I'm sorry, I really am sorry that that's the case, but that's not my problem as the talent. I'm going to stay in, if I've met you, I'm going to try and stay in touch with you. It's the cold solicitations that can go awry. If Gus Johnson at some audio company is the casting director and doesn't know you from Adam, your emails are just going to be ignored. It's about finding that one in, and then you build on that with a regular kind of, every month, every 2 months, whatever, a touch base. Here's what I'm up to. And it's not, and it's implied in the interaction. People say, I think one of the most obvious mistakes narrators make is please keep me in mind for any future projects. Well, that's obvious. I don't send my narrator update to my auto mechanic or my dentist, right? It's implied in the communication. When I send my update, if I'm in between projects and I send out an update to my client base, I never say, think of me. The fact that I'm emailing them is the whole think of me moment. They go, oh, Sean, do we have anything for Sean? Yes, or no, not right now. I don't expect them to get back to me because I know they're busy. They'll get back to me if they have something, and that's okay. But don't fill the vacuum of information with anxiety and negative thoughts. And unfortunately, even as bad as Americans could be like this, I think the British culturally are worse at it for that very reason. They think, oh, they've printed out my email, they're showing it around the office, no one's laughing and putting it up on the dartboard and throwing, no, they don't have enough time in their day to care that much.
But so that's because I do it now regularly.
Right.
And everyone's personal. It's not a newsletter. It's personal to the person I'm finding, I'm communicating with them. But since I've started doing it on a regular schedule, I'm sending something to someone every week, it's become an admin task. So yes. It's like auditions, like you always said, you're working on your business. It's auditions. I do it so often, it's just part of the job. I'm not doing it, hitting send, and then sitting there going, oh my God, have they gotten back? I've forgotten it.
Someone new to our industry it's like a lot of new students to me, they'll go, well, I auditioned for this one thing for ACX and I'm waiting to hear back. I said, how long ago was that? 3 weeks. And I'm like, the job is auditioning. You walk in the door, you audition, you give it everything you got, and when you hit the door, you forget about it and you go right to the next audition. And even if that next project could interfere with the first one, don't let that stop you for a minute. If there's a book you audition for that's going to be done in January and another one in January and another one in January, it doesn't matter.
That's the other thing I hear. I'm not going to send anything to publishers because what if they hire me? If I send it to 5 publishers and they all come back to me and Johnny Heller, no, Johnny Heller probably shouldn't reach out to 20 publishers because 19 will come back to him. If you have 2 books on ACX and you reach out to 10 publishers, or I don't know how many books you should have before you start reaching out to publishers, but if you're new and you're just starting to reach out to publishers and you're reaching out to 10, 20 publishers, you're not going to have 19 jobs wanting you at the same minute. You're not. I'm sorry.
In fairness, I remember being 13 or 14 and playing tennis at my local club, and I was very good. And on a Saturday afternoon, I was asked to stay and play with the grown-ups. And I had a friend, we played female doubles, and we were good. And one day we were brave enough to go up to the coach and ask how one goes to Wimbledon. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And I had no concept of what there was between the Hendon Tennis Club and Wimbledon. And I think that's the trouble. When you don't know what you don't know, you assume that if you write to Harper and you say, hello, I'm a narrator, they go, great, here's a book. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. But it takes a while to work that out.
Yeah, but you got to work it out yourself, though. And it's what Sean taught. That's because what Sean kept saying, and it took me, 5 years to finally get it? Another one of those things.
But you did.
It's not the outcome. Actually, and Anna said this to me a million times too, but I've said it to you. It's not the outcome, it's the process. So it's not whether they're going to hire me from this audition or this publisher letter. It's me being the boss of my business, doing the audition, writing the publisher letters. Look at me. I'm in charge. And that's what I can be proud of.
When you do one audition and wait like that, you load that audition up.
Yeah.
But if you start auditioning on a regular basis, it just becomes reflexive. And then it loses the negative mystique it has over you. Because it's just a process. It's an admin job. And so the more you do it, or the easier it becomes, the better you get at it, and eventually things start to happen. It's like working, once again, it's like when I'm trying to get my students onto social media. For some of them it's like pulling teeth, literally. And I say, look, this is a process. And so I make my students get on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, thank you. And so when I come back, when I check in, I said, how are you doing on social media? Well, I've been on Facebook a lot and a little on Instagram, but I haven't really touched Twitter or LinkedIn. And I'm like going, it's the same fucking post. Put the goddamn thing up there, get on the goddamn thing and get it done. And I yell at them because it's like, look, we regularly book work through those platforms, and they're passing up an opportunity because I don't know why. And I do know why, because they're reticent. They think they post something and somehow someone's going to leave a snarky comment, or I don't, they're just afraid. And
it's how you feel about yourself that day. Because I noticed myself the other day, I felt rubbish. I looked in the mirror, I thought I was fat. And so guess what? I decided, instead of sending my personal, I've got no secrets anymore, no shame after all these YouTubes. But I found myself, and I've noticed a nasty habit of posting promo for the Cup of Joe on everywhere instead of my weekly promo for myself. Because that's easy. If you're having a bad hair day or you look rubbish, I'll just advertise someone else.
The thing I tell my students, the way to get around this apprehension is you have to realize there's 3 big obstacles that stand in your way. The first obstacle, and the one we're actually talking about tonight, is cultural. Not only cultural between British and American, but just cultural within the family. The notion of self-promotion, right? That you're bigging yourself up or you're bragging. And what I try to tell them is, look, you're not saying you're the best. I don't say I'm the best narrator ever when I post. All I'm saying is, I love my job. Here's what I got to do this week. That's all you're saying. And if there's any kind of, Sean's a great narrator, it's by a third party, whether it's a good review or the author might have said something nice and I can publish that. I let the third party say something nice about me, but I don't. So that obstacle alone is a huge one to get over. And I think that's really the crux of this, about self-promotion culturally. But it's also something personal. Americans too have trouble sometimes promoting themselves on social media. What kind of image do they want to put out, right? And that first obstacle can just be a killer to get over. Until you realize you're not saying I am the best, you're just saying I love what I do. And I always say, you're helping the author, you're helping the publisher, you're
And the
helping a listener.
publishers are nice. I mean, they don't know. When I stopped caring if they got back to me and I started regularly reaching out and not doing that, oh God, I already sent them a message. They're the ones that get back to you are just lovely, nice people with dogs and families and holidays coming up. They're
Yeah.
lovely. One guy got back to me and said, can I sneak the vaccine over to, I mean, do you know what I mean? Because we were getting it first. They're just nice people. So it's not a scary, horrible thing you're doing. You're sending messages, and sometimes nice people will get back to you.
Yes, and also, frankly, though, sometimes you're going to have that idiot who, like, you have a terrible American accent. That does happen on occasion, and you learn from that experience that not everybody is on your team, but the majority are.
Yeah.
Or at the very least,
don't quit acting for 5 years.
They're on your team. I think you have there's only a small sliver of people who are just jerks.
Yeah.
You have another, at the other extreme, you have a fair number of people who are just nice and will, try to be pleasant to you. And the larger middle are sort of non-committal. And that's actually okay. That's fine. Then you can work to bring them over to that other group that's positive for you, but it just takes time. So those producers and directors and casting people who don't respond, who might be non-committal, once again, it's just business. They're overworked, they're understaffed, they're trying to get 17 things out the door, and no, they did not have time to listen to your demo. And they're not going to really read your email. Not this time. But eventually, if you keep working the process, your career will continue to build, and then eventually that one email will land in there where you say, hey, I got an interview or a review in AudioFile magazine, and they go, whoa, well, I got to see what that is. And then suddenly—
And the process. Oh my God. You're a genius, Sean, because you brought the theater thing up, because I quit for 5 years because of that guy, but I was feeling bad about myself at the time and insecure. But if you're keeping the process up and you're feeling good about yourself, because I'm Daniela that wakes up and sends out auditions every week. I'm Daniela that sends publishers. So I'm feeling good. So it won't matter so much if that jerk guy starts reviewing audiobooks.
Like I said, if you get up in the morning and pretend you're selling the blue ball and not yourself, it's a lot easier to do the process. And you've dissociated it from yourself. You're writing copy about, okay, was that the right tone I want for this email? Is that the right photograph I want to promote the book? And so it's in a way, you step outside yourself and you wear this hat of the marketing director, and you're not wearing the hat of the narrator anymore. And so then you can fuss around with content and style, and that's the key. And by separating yourself from it, it just makes it easier.
I love this call. I love this call. I hope everyone else got something from it, because I'm totally having a great time. Okay, so I learned this trick from Sean. Sean and Anna, you did it on your first call, and I think it's priceless. And now I make everyone do it. They're probably not thanking you for it. Sean and Anna, can you please say a word to our YouTube guests that will be watching you for millennia? Any last words of wisdom?
Authenticity.
Huh?
Authenticity. Whatever that means. That's what I'm going with.
I say, accept the fact that you're going to fall down a lot. It's not the falling down part that counts. It's the getting back up part that counts. All right?
I like that one. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, you guys. This was so much fun. I haven't done a dual call before. This was fabulous. And it's been wonderful. You guys taught us all so much. And thank you to Helen for having our backs. I hope you have a wonderful week. And thanks everyone for joining.
Happy holidays. Yeah.
Bye guys. Bye. It's nice to have you in England, Sean. Bye. Bye everyone.